Remember Goldeneye? That old video game that we millennials would play with our friends so long that the sun came up before we'd even gotten to bed? The old video game we've watched hours and hours of stories on by the likes of Carl Jobst or Goose's Gamer Folklore? Yeah, I thought you might. Now that I've solidly carved out the demographic that will actually be interested in watching this video, let me ask you all this. Have you ever seen the movie the game was made after? Both the game and the movie are solid gold as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure many of you would agree, but there's always been something between the two mediums that bothered me here. Why are Natalia and I in a jail cell together in this mission of the game when that never happened in the movie? Actually, now that I mentioned that, why did Bond end up in Severnaya at all before Ourumov ever broke into the facility to steal the Goldeneye key in the first... Okay, you know what? There were a lot of discrepancies between the two stories that are being told here, and today, I just kinda want to talk about them. The movie begins with James Bond running atop a dam when suddenly he stops and hooks himself up for a sick bungee jump. Moving into the facility Bond just jumped down to, James meets with Alec Trevelyan, his partner in this affair, and they make their way calmly into the facility in order to rig the place to blow to high heaven. But all of a sudden, their cover is blown. Bond begins to set the timer on the bombs while Trevelyan is more focused on laying down suppressive fire to buy as much time as they can. Before he knows it though, Bond finds Alec is being held at gunpoint. Given they've been found out and Bond needs to find a crafty way to get out of this situation, he brings the bomb's timers down to 3 minutes as Alex gets his KD brought down and cleverly hides behind this rack of explosive barrels in order to slowly move from one side of the room to the other without being shot. This scene is fantastic, as many of them are, and I highly recommend you watch this movie if you haven't seen it already, before I end up spoiling all the good parts. So the place is set to blow, and Bond strong arms his way into a position where he's able to escape, only now he needs to actually make sure that he can escape. There is a plane setting out to fly by the time he gets outside, only in wrestling with the pilot, they get tossed out, sending the plane towards the cliff with nobody inside. Thinking quickly, he steals a motorbike from one of these enemies, does this, makes his way smoothly into the plane, and his mission was accomplished, albeit with an agent lost in the chaos. This all plays out relatively true in the game, but with a couple of small differences. Firstly, we have a whole mission that leads up to Bond running along the dam and bungee jumping from the rail, but as video games go, it makes sense to me that they would add a little context for gamers to understand how we got into this facility area without just a cutscene. The facility mission plays similarly too, with the only real difference being that we only meet Alec Trevelyan in the room that we're planting the bombs in, rather than running into him throughout the facility. Well, there's that, and the fact that we don't get a funny rack of barrels to walk behind in this escape section of the mission. And then we have this runaway mission, which is actually quite different. I guess there was no good way they could figure out how to have us ride a motorbike off a cliff into a sweet swan dive to enter a falling plane in order to keep ourselves from dying. Instead, we need to find a key to the plane and simply use it to take off in order to escape the enemy. Also, we can ride a tank in this mission, which is pretty cool, but I honestly don't know why they put this here. Carrying on with the movie, we have plenty of character and plot setup which really wouldn't translate to good gameplay, so of course these parts aren't perfectly reflected on the N64. Initially, I was gonna go into detail about everything that happened in this part of the movie, but to be honest, it got kind of long-winded and it seemed a little boring, so let me just give you the footnotes of what's going on here. Bond meets a woman named Xenia Onatop who he finds out is an ex-Soviet fighter pilot. He spies on her a bit, and the next day decides to sneakily board the boat that she spent the night on. He finds that she left a dead helicopter pilot in his own closet and goes to find where she's gone off to. Xenia, meanwhile, is at a military showcase for a new stealth chopper, and after showing these pilots a good time, steals their uniforms and thusly steals the stealth chopper undetected. Smash cut to Xenia and Ourumov, the guy in charge from the facility mission years ago, pulling into a satellite control station in Severnaya with their newly acquired helicopter, wasting everybody inside and stealing the key to the Goldeneye satellite's controls after setting it to EMP the entire area to cover their tracks. One woman survives this whole ordeal, and we'll talk about her a bit later. Back to Bond, we find him in MI6 headquarters where he, his team, and the new leader of the MI6, M, are talking about their leads on this supposed Goldeneye weapon, and whether or not it actually exists. Suddenly, they see firsthand from satellite images that the whole Severnaya area was just hit with an EMP and realize that it must be the Goldeneye after all. Bond receives his mission, meets with an American CIA member for intel, finds out the KGB are competing with this Yanis crime syndicate for the Goldeneye, and decides to hook up with an ex-KGB member to figure out how to set up a meeting with Yanis himself. Everything goes well, and Bond is set to meet Yanis in some statue graveyard of sorts in St. Petersburg, and out from the shadows comes his old friend Trevelyan, revealing that he is A, alive, and B, Yanis himself. One of his men tranquilizes James and sits him in their stolen helicopter. He wakes up to this woman from earlier screaming at him to do something as the helicopter fires missiles targeting itself, and James just barely manages to hit the eject seat button to avoid certain death. But upon finding that they've survived, they are immediately arrested by Russian authorities for questioning. But why is she here again? So, Natalia Simonova works as a valuable programmer in this facility in Severnaya with a man who was also quite talented named Boris Grishenko. Boris was privy to the invasion of the satellite and joined Uramov's team as a genius hacker, but Natalia just managed to make it out alive on her own. Making quick work of finding that her friend Boris is still alive and contacting him, Natalia meets up with him only to find out he's been working with the Russian traders and refuses to offer her services to them alongside Boris. Because she knows too much, she finds herself in a helicopter waiting to die with James Bond. Two birds with one stone, you know? Okay, geez. That was kinda long anyways, but stick with me. Most of these events are not mission related or action packed by any means, so how did the Rare team find a way to create playable moments here? Well, it's kinda simple. They just deviated from the story entirely and kinda did their own thing. Our first mission, after the events of times long past, actually takes place in Severnaya. I guess instead of keeping an eye on this satellite facility from MI6 headquarters due to suspected Goldeneye activity, they just sent Bond into the fray to check it out for himself. Our first mission here, Surface, is pretty simple. We just need to shut down satellite communications to keep our mission on the stealthy side, and steal building plans so we can figure out what they're doing underground in this facility. Of course, these building plans never happened in the movie either, but they're really setting up this facility in the game to be the main headquarters for the bad guys, so I guess we're just gonna have to deal with that. So we break in to figure out exactly what's going on, we find Boris and get him to break into the database so we can copy information from it, and then we make a copy of the Goldeneye key for some reason and leave the original key in the base here to make it seem like we never came by in the first place. Never mind all the dead guys in the building, Bond was definitely not here. Our next mission is completely unrelated to the movie, but I guess it's kind of an intel grab from Bond in this missile silo that Urumov has control over. We take pictures of a satellite, we grab random telemetric data for MI6, and we chase away Urumov, coming just short of actually getting our hands on him. Moving forward, we find ourselves on a ship, which I guess is kind of a callback to when James did some investigative work on the ship Xenia killed the pilot on and stole his identification, but it's already so out of order compared to the movie, as this was meant to happen before all the Severnaya investigation stuff. Even so, this mission is completely different from how the section played out in the movie. Instead of finding a man dead and failing to catch Xenia, we're actually tasked with saving hostages and disarming bombs aboard the ship. The one part of this mission that actually makes some kind of sense according to the movie is that we're planting a tracking bug on this helicopter, which I assume is supposed to be the chopper that Xenia steals from the movie. Jumping forward again, we're back in Severnaya because apparently James Bond can make his way across most of the world in a moment's notice whenever he needs to. Once again, we disable all surveillance, break the bunker's communications, and it plays out very similarly to the first time we were here. This time we do get to blow up the stolen helicopter though, and I guess this also kind of explains how we knew to come here in the first place as opposed to our first Severnaya trip, because, you know, we can track the helicopter. Honestly, I think the first time we come here in this game could have been left out entirely and the story would have been a little more true to the movie, but only by a little bit. This time we finish off our mission by getting caught by the enemy and put in a prison cell. This most definitely never happened in the movie. Another thing that never happened and is completely out of order here is that we meet Natalia in prison. I don't know why she's already in jail, as we never really had a moment to believe that they had a reason to imprison her like we have in the movie, but she is here, and we need to get her out alive as she clearly knows her way around this place and might be useful. The cool part of this mission is that the facility has actually been developed quite a bit more in the basement than it was on our first visit. Their underground building plans are progressing throughout the course of this game, and I honestly think that's really neat. While we're making our great escape from this this place, we do collect what is apparently crucial information regarding the enemy's plans and records of their activities, and then we get out easy peasy. Our following mission catches us up to where we were in the movie, as this is the St. Petersburg meeting between Bond and Trevelyan, or Yanis, I guess. I can't say for sure how they got this meeting set up in the game, as we had no information given to us by Valentine this time around, but that's neither here nor there, as we actually meet up with Valentine here in the middle of the statue graveyard for some reason. Apparently, we had contacted him to set up this meeting because he mentions where we can find Yanis in this whole mess of an area, and he quickly leaves hoping to remain unseen. Upon meeting Yanis and finding that he's actually Trevelyan and all that, we need to run as fast as we can back to the gate where we came from. See, the reason that we came here was not only to meet with Yanis, but also to save Natalia, because I guess in the game she was captured by Yanis after we saved her from the prison in Russia, and she's been set to blow up in a helicopter after a couple seconds, so we've got to save her before it happens. We can find her near the gates unconscious near this helicopter, which I think is the actual helicopter that Xenia stole earlier. It's mentioned in our mission dossier that we've lost track of it, meaning they've probably dealt with the tracker, so maybe the one that we blew up before just was a different helicopter? Either way, the end of the mission plays out the same as in the movie. We escape with our lives and get brought in by Russian authorities for questioning. Finally, we've caught up to the movie and landed in the same place. Next in the movie, Bond talks to Natalia while they have some small time alone and finds out that she knows quite a lot that could help him take down the enemy. Defense Minister Mishkin comes in and gets right to it, asking about everything they know regarding recent events at Severnaya. A brief spat between Bond and Mishkin breaks out here before Natalia finally reveals that she was there when Ourumov betrayed the country and his position within it. Unfortunately, Ourumov comes into the room and tries taking over the investigation, and when he's told that they now know what he's doing, he shoots both Mishkin and his guard, blames Bond for it while calling the other guards into the room, and Bond and Natalia have to do their best to escape. Unfortunately, Natalia gets captured and Bond chases after Ourumov's car in a tank, which is hilarious. Ourumov takes Natalia onto a train where Yanis and Xenia are waiting to get away, and Bond manages to position his tank on the tracks facing in their direction. He fires at the train, forcing them to stop, and hops aboard. While Bond does have Yanis at gunpoint, Ourumov has the same upper hand on Natalia. Ultimately, Bond chooses to save Natalia by shooting Ourumov as the other two get away. With this train cleverly set to explode, Bond starts working on creating an exit while Natalia works her magic on the computer to once again track down Boris. All's well that ends well though, as they do find that Boris is located in Cuba and manage to escape the train just before it explodes. In the game, this plays out shockingly accurate to the original, but this is a lot of action with James himself, so I guess that does make sense. From our entrapment, without Natalia mind you, we run through the offices we were brought into, save Natalia from her interrogation room, and escape as she gets captured off screen. We do actually meet with the Minister of Defense in this building under slightly different circumstances, and as far as I know, he actually does live this time around. Flashback to our pursuit of Natalia. First off, we actually do get a tank in this mission, which is always a good time. But with all the landmines on the road here, it's honestly better not to drive it.
Look at this fucking line I take. I already know I'm getting there on the perfect line.
We also have one quick stop that we have to make for the sake of engaging gameplay, where we can once again find Valentine, who we convince to make one helpful phone call, giving us extra time to complete the mission. Basically, he calls in some men that'll delay Ourumov's vehicle from arriving at the train yard so that we can keep up with him in good time. With this chase sequence over, we find the train yard, destroy some intelligence Yanis' team was using, as well as their weapon stash, and we board the train. This time around, Bond is getting on the train just as it departs, but it all plays out pretty much exactly the same, but this time we do blow out the brakes to make sure the train will stop instead of shooting it with a tank. We find Yanis and Xenia with Ourumov holding Natalia at gunpoint, and just like in the movie, we have to make the right choice in saving our friend instead of shooting Yanis in his hilariously Sean Bean textured head. Natalia spends most of the bomb timer trying to figure out where Boris went. We open up a piece of the floor by using our cool watch laser, just like in the movie, and we escape just fine. Back to the movie, Bond and Natalia get a plane from the chill American CIA member he's been in contact with this whole time, and the two take to the sky to look for where the Yanis base might be. They find nothing until a heat-seeking missile comes from under the water and hits their plane dead on. They crash onto the island, barely alive, and they crawl out from the wreck. Shortly after, Xenia shows up in a helicopter and attempts for the third time in this movie to kill Bond, only for Bond to shoot out her chopper, causing it to fly away uncontrollably, pulling Xenia into a tree and ultimately killing her. As they did crash land near the Yanis base due to that missile, they get to see a huge antenna for the Goldeneye satellite rising from the water as the water begins to drain from this lake, giving our heroes a way to get into the facility. Once inside, Bond begins planting bombs, as he's known for doing in this film, until he gets found out and his bombs get disarmed by Yanis, who knows how the MI6 gadgets work. Meanwhile, Natalia has been messing with Boris's codes, causing a bit of a kerfuffle. Realizing they need to now correct what she's done in order for this plan to work, Boris gets a move on, but there's one thing they don't know that is working in Bond's favor here. Earlier in the movie, we're introduced to this neat pen bomb by Q. He tells Bond that if you click the pen only 3 times, the bomb will activate and explode shortly after. Fortunately, when Bond was frisked for everything he had on him, they took this pen and put it on the desk with his other things. When Boris frantically works on finding out Natalia's codes, he nervously clicks this pen, and once he's clicked it 3 times consecutively, Bond smacks it up into the air, blowing up a huge tank on the floor above them. Bond and Natalia make it out alive. Natalia leaves the building, and James heads up to the satellite antenna itself as Yanis chases after him. Knowing Boris would probably bring the codes back to normal, Bond attempts to sabotage the antenna himself, which works swimmingly. Now in pursuit of Yanis, Bond climbs further down. Suddenly ambushed by his opponent, a fistfight breaks out until finally Bond makes a slim escape down to a tiny platform at the bottom of this antenna. Not an effective escape here really, but Yanis is out of bullets and still needs to finish him off on his own, which he almost does. But Bond does get the upper hand while Yanis is distracted by a nearby helicopter, and he manages to deliver a sick one-liner calling back to when they were partners.
For England, James? No. For me.
Natalia, holding the helicopter pilot at gunpoint, picks up James from the antenna and they get away and live happily ever after. The way this plays out in the game is exactly as you'd expect. Quite differently. We do get a fun romp through this jungle after our plane crash lands, and we even get to defeat Xenia, who, instead of fighting with her legs, fights us mostly with a grenade launcher. Next we break into the Yanis base with Natalia, and we get to the control room where, once we've cleared it out, we get to play Protect the Programmer as Natalia tries to change the Goldeneye codes and keep it from firing an EMP pulse into London. Once again, we escape together, just barely not catching up to Yanis in the elevator. This would lead us to the spot in the movie where Natalia makes it out of the building and we run up to the antenna being chased by Yanis, only for some reason we take a brief moment to run through this system of caves? Honestly, I'm not sure what this mission was meant to accomplish, being put right between the 2 finale scenes of the movie, but what we accomplish here actually does kind of have something to do with the way that the movie plays out. So near the end of this mission, we use the enemy's radio to call our CIA operative and have him bring us backup, which wasn't ever shown in the movie and was more used as a silly way to break up this sweet moment between Bond and Natalia in the ending. Once we make our way out of these caverns, we're finally given this finishing chase sequence where we need to sabotage the machine from on top of it and find our old friend in a tiny storage room aboard it. Yanis jumps down to the platform we're going to end up finishing him off on, and once we follow him, it's one quick shot and... I said one quick shot, damn you. There we go. It's one quick shot, and we've completed the game. Helicopter scene and all. In the end, I think this game does a pretty decent job of hitting all the important movie moments in each of its missions, although some of them were completely blown out of proportion like this frigate level, or completely fabricated for the sake of additional gameplay moments like the cavern mission at the end, or the 2 missions that bring Bond to Severnaya, which he never actually visits in the movie once. Aside from this though, we get our whole intro sequence with Trevelyan, we get the twisty reveal that he survived and became the head of the Yanis organization, we get the interrogation escape followed by the tank chase sequence and the train scene, we get the jungle kill on Xenia, a first-hand experience with Natalia destroying Boris's codes, and we get the final scene on top of the Goldeneye communication antenna. As a kid, well, I was pretty bad at paying attention to things like this, but it still brought me so much joy to be able to live out the events of one of my favorite movies growing up in one of my favorite games growing up. Goldeneye 64 is obviously a treasure, and I highly recommend you try it out for yourself if you haven't before. And go watch the movie too. It's so fun to be able to experience this story through such different lenses, especially when both of them were so well done in the end. Anyway, I'm gonna go watch the movie for the bajillionth time now, so thanks for watching everybody. Let me know in the comments if longer form content like this is something you'd be interested in seeing from me, and like and subscribe while you're down there, yada yada. As for now, my name's Myloe, and I'm out.